What's the price of betraying the most important person in history? According to one of his closest friends, it was exactly 30 pieces of silver. In first-century Palestine, 30 pieces of silver was the compensation required by law for accidentally killing someone's slave. It wasn't a fortune, it was barely enough to buy a small field. Yet this became the infamous price tag placed on Jesus Christ, the promised Messiah, by one of his own disciples. Judas Iscariot had walked with Jesus for 3 years. He'd witnessed countless miracles, heard profound teachings, and seen the blind receive sight and the dead rise to life. He'd been entrusted as the group's treasurer, handling their modest finances. But somewhere along the journey, something dark took root in his heart. The Gospel of Matthew tells us that Judas approached the chief priests with a chilling question. "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you?" The religious leaders, who'd been plotting Jesus' death for months, quickly agreed. They counted out 30 silver coins, the exact amount prophesied by Zechariah centuries earlier. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. Luke's Gospel reveals that Satan had entered Judas, suggesting spiritual forces were at work. The betrayal was both a human choice and part of a cosmic battle between good and evil. Judas had likely grown disillusioned with Jesus' mission, perhaps expecting a political revolutionary who would overthrow Roman rule, not a humble teacher speaking of sacrifice and love. The irony runs deeper than we might realize. In the Old Testament, 30 shekels was the price of a slave's life, according to Exodus chapter 21. The religious leaders were essentially saying that Jesus, whom Christians believed to be the Son of God, was worth no more than a common slave. Yet this apparent insult would become central to Christian theology, as Jesus willingly became a servant to all humanity. The betrayal unfolded in the Garden of Gethsemane on a Thursday night. Jesus had just finished praying so intensely that his sweat became like drops of blood. He knew what was coming. When Judas arrived with soldiers and temple guards, he identified Jesus with a kiss, a traditional greeting between rabbi and student. The tenderness of the gesture made the betrayal even more heartbreaking. Jesus' response reveals his divine nature. He didn't resist or call down angels to defend him. Instead, he asked, "Friend, do what you came for." Even in this moment of ultimate betrayal, Jesus showed compassion toward his betrayer. He could have exposed Judas earlier or prevented the betrayal entirely, but he chose to fulfill his mission of salvation. The 30 pieces of silver quickly became a burden too heavy for Judas to bear. When he saw that Jesus was condemned to death, overwhelming guilt consumed him. Matthew chapter 27 describes how Judas returned to the chief priests, desperately trying to give back the money. "I have sinned by betraying innocent blood," he confessed. But the religious leaders coldly replied, "What is that to us? That's your responsibility." In despair, Judas threw the silver coins into the temple and went out and hanged himself. The chief priests, suddenly concerned about religious law, declared the money too tainted to put in the temple treasury. Instead, they used it to buy a potter's field as a burial place for foreigners, fulfilling yet another Old Testament prophecy. This tragic story reveals profound truths about human nature and divine love. Judas represents how close we can be to goodness, yet still choose evil. He had every advantage, every opportunity to embrace the truth, yet he allowed greed and disappointment to corrupt his heart. His story warns us that proximity to holiness doesn't guarantee a holy heart. Yet even Judas's betrayal served God's greater purpose. Without the betrayal, there would have been no arrest, no trial, no crucifixion, and ultimately no resurrection. God's sovereignty worked through human weakness to accomplish the greatest rescue mission in history. The 30 pieces of silver, meant to purchase Jesus' destruction, actually financed humanity's salvation. The contrast between Judas and the other disciples is striking. When Jesus predicted that one would betray him, each disciple asked, "Surely not I, Lord." They recognized their own capacity for failure. This humility, absent in Judas, became the foundation for their later transformation. Today, the phrase 30 pieces of silver symbolizes betrayal for personal gain. It reminds us that everyone has a price, but some prices are too costly for our souls. Judas gained 30 coins but lost everything that mattered. His story challenges us to examine our own loyalties and consider what we might be tempted to trade for temporary advantage. The shepherd's price of 30 silver pieces ultimately revealed not Jesus' worthlessness, but his priceless love for humanity. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Then hit the notification bell so you won't forget the new weekly videos.